It's in our nature as humans to be competitive. We all want to be the best at something, and at times, our desire to be number one often overpowers our common sense. The Guinness Book of World Records has been captivating us and tapping into that competitive nature since 1951. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, and sometimes we die. Here are just 5 people who died trying to break world records. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Sailendra Nath Roy. Sailendra Nath Roy was no amateur when it came to stunts and beating world records, with oddly enough, his ponytail. The Indian native already held the Guinness World Record for traveling the furthest distance ziplining by ponytail and the furthest distance traveled pulling a train with his ponytail. In 2008, he famously flew from one building to another from his ponytail tied to a rope. That guy had some strong hair. On April 29th, 2013, in an attempt to beat his own record of ziplining by his ponytail, Sailendra set up a 600-foot zip wire from the Coronation Bridge some 70 feet above the Teesta River in Darjeeling. Over 100 people had gathered on the Coronation Bridge that day to watch, record, and cheer on the 50-year-old police officer's attempt to beat his own record. Sailendra took every precaution into account, wearing a life jacket and checking to make sure his equipment was properly set up, but there was one thing he just wasn't prepared for that fateful day. The morning of the stunt, Sailendra's wife urged him to not go and quit with the ridiculous stunts. Sailendra kissed his wife goodbye and promised this would be his last stunt. Little did he know, he was right. Sailendra got into position at the beginning of the zip wire and attached his ponytail to the line. After checking his gear one last time, he made the leap and began traveling down the wire effortlessly. About halfway down the zip wire, his hair ended up tangled with the zip wire and you see him frantically try to get untangled so he can make it to the end. Then, in just a split second, his arms fall to his side and Sailendra hangs by his ponytail, limp and motionless. It took onlookers 29 minutes to retrieve him from the zip wire. When the crowd was able to get him down, he was unconscious but still alive. There were no paramedics on site, so the crowd called emergency services, who responded to the scene. Sailendra was alive, barely. He was rushed to the closest hospital where he died just moments after arriving at the emergency room. Doctors say that Sailendra tragically suffered a heart attack while trying to untangle himself and was unable to cry for help as he immediately passed out when the heart attack hit. It's sad to say that Sailendra did keep his promise to his concerned wife that day. It would truly be his last stunt. Sailendra still holds the Guinness World Record for furthest distance ziplining by ponytail. Number 4. Janaka Basnayake. Janaka Basnayake was native to Sri Lanka and had an odd fascination with performing unusual acts since he was a child. His mother says his fascination grew from watching movies and wanting to become a stuntman. He had always given her great stress as she always worried about his safety. Janaka had been buried alive on 2 other occasions with the help of family in preparation for his attempt to beat the current world record. He and his family dug a 10-foot deep trench and crafted a box made of wood just large enough that Janaka could fit inside. That morning, Janaka climbed inside the wooden box and was buried alive in the box by his family. Janaka performed this death-defying stunt on 2 other occasions in preparation for this day. On his first attempt, he was dug up after just 2 hours of being buried alive. In his second attempt, Janaka was dug up after 6 hours of being buried, and while he was close to passing out, Janaka was confident in his ability to perform the stunt. His family was extremely concerned, but there was little they could do to stop him from living his dream of going down in history as the man who survived the longest buried alive. There is no active world record for being buried alive, and the Guinness Book of World Records does not condone this sort of record setting as it's too dangerous of a stunt and they don't want people dying in attempting to set records. However, there are those who have tried the stunt, including illusionist David Blaine, who was buried in a clear box under a water tank for 7 days. In 2012, Janaka was nailed shut inside his wooden box and lowered into the 10-foot hole around 9:30 in the morning that Saturday. Janaka was brought to the surface Sunday at 4 in the afternoon. The box was opened to reveal that Janaka was unconscious but alive. He was rushed to Kentale Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Dr. Costa, the emergency physician on duty that day, said that he had in fact suffocated due to lack of oxygen. In the video, we see the moment Janaka's mother sees him for the first time after his tragic death, and her horrifying screams are enough to make you want to cry with her. Number 3. Juan Francisco Guillermo. Juan Francisco Guillermo was a 48-year-old Chilean cycling enthusiast who placed his bid with the Guinness Book of World Records to cycle the globe in 5 years. Guillermo started his journey in November of 2010 and was expected to return in November of 2015. During the 5 years, he would cycle an incredible 155,350 miles around the world. Guillermo was accompanied by his wife and 2-year-old son on the incredible journey. Guillermo and family attempted the feat with no money or sponsorships and instead cycled with a sign posted to the back of the bicycle asking for donations to fund his journey, and people were all too willing to support his efforts. The family managed to cycle their way through most of the trip, which brought them to Thailand in February of 2015. Just months before he was expected to cross that finish line in November of 2015, Guillermo was tragically hit by a pickup truck. His 2-year-old son was being pulled along in a baby carrier attached to Guillermo's bicycle at the time of the accident. Thankfully, the young boy survived the accident but suffered a broken wrist. Guillermo's wife was on another bicycle and was not involved in the accident. The pickup driver was arrested by Thailand officials on charges of causing a death by dangerous driving and was released on bail. If convicted, the driver faces up to 10 years in prison. The officer who responded to the tragic scene claims that it was the driver's recklessness that caused the accident, as the road was straight and clear of traffic. Guillermo was following traffic laws and was cycling in his own lane. The death came at a rather inconvenient time for the Thailand government, as they tried hard to promote bicycling for sport, commuting, and tourism, with hopes of creating a similar competition to that of the world-famous Tour de France. Guillermo's death was a tragic accident, and according to his wife, he loved life and he loved cycling. It was his passion. It was a passion he shared with his family, and despite his untimely death, his wife plans on continuing to cycle with her son and bring him up sharing in the joy and in the passion his father had for the sport and for him. Number 2. Jessica Dubroff. Jessica Dubroff was an all-American girl born in May of 1988. Jessica had 2 loving parents who instilled the belief that she could do anything she set her mind to. Jessica decided at an early age that she wanted to become a pilot, and parents Lisa Blair and Lloyd Dubroff were more than happy to help their daughter live her dreams. For her 6th birthday, Jessica's parents set her up with flight instructor Joe Reed, who began to teach the young girl how to fly, despite Federal Aviation Administration rules which states a child must be the age of 16 to receive a learning permit. Not only was Jessica too young to take to flying, her instructor didn't possess proper medical certificates, nor did he possess instructing permits to teach flying lessons. But this didn't seem to bother her parents, who willingly paid Reed to provide instruction. It was Jessica's father who suggested the pair prepare for a coast-to-coast flight, making Jessica the youngest in the world to attempt such a feat. Reed was all too excited and willing to participate to gain exposure and notoriety. Due to the age requirements set by the FAA, there is no official world record for the youngest person to attempt this flight, but other children have gone before her and successfully completed the journey. However, none were nearly as young as little Jessica. Reed and Jessica's father planned that Reed would sit at the controls while Jessica flew the plane. Her father would ride along in the back for moral support. Reed's wife commented on what a bad idea this was, but Reed blew her off, telling her it was nothing more than flying with a 6-year-old kid and her father, who was footing the bill. Despite her warnings, Reed took the challenge, and Jessica, her father, and instructor took to the skies Thursday, April 11th, 1996 at 8:24 a.m. The weather was particularly bad that day, and according to the United States National Transportation Safety Board, Reed shouldn't have taken off that morning with the weather conditions as they were, but the group continued as planned happened due to the massive amount of media exposure Jessica had received. At 8:24 a.m., the trio took to the skies, despite warnings not to do so. The crowd looked on as they took off from the airport and almost immediately began to struggle in the terrible weather. Jessica lost control of the plane as onlookers watched, helpless, as they came crashing down. All three were killed instantly upon impact that tragic day. Number 1. Javad Palisbanian. Javad Palisbanian was a daredevil from Iran who lived for the thrill, the rush, and the glory of performing death-defying motorcycle stunts. The month before his tragic accident, Javad had successfully jumped his motorcycle over a river 51 yards wide, which is no easy feat. Having grown up his whole life watching his idols perform amazing stunts, Javad knew that this was what he was meant to do, according to his family. He had always scared his mother as a child, trying to perform silly and often dangerous stunts. At the age of 44, Javad had not grown out of his stunt phase and, in fact, made a pretty decent living for him and his family performing motorcycle stunts. In 2005, Javad decided it was time to go big and placed his bid to attempt to beat the Guinness World Record for jumping over 21 buses with his motorcycle. Javad spent years training for this day and felt that he was ready to take on the challenge. Javad had become somewhat of a local celebrity in Iran and had a crowd of a few hundred people watching and recording his epic moment. This was going to be the stunt of all stunts, the defining moment that would put him in the spotlight and secure his place in history. The local state news network was even there to record this historic day. In the video, you see Javad ready to go with the crowd cheering him on. He takes a moment or two to bask in the spotlight before he races up the ramp and takes off flying into the air, soaring over bus after bus. But tragically, by around the 11th bus, something goes horribly wrong and Javad crashes right on top of the buses, instantly killing him on impact. The crowd gasps and watches in horror as they look for signs of life from their local hero, but sadly, he had died. The state news network had been providing live footage of the stunt on television, but immediately cut the feed when he crashed as the scene was far too graphic for television. The state news network aired his story that night. The nation of Iran watched in horror as Javad met his tragic end, and many Iranians felt they lost a natural celebrity and friend that tragic day. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.